For England, James? No, for me. GoldenEye wasn't just Pierce Brosnan's debut as James Bond. It was the resurrection of a franchise left for dead. After a 6-year hiatus, lawsuits, and studio turmoil, Bond returned in 1995. But the journey was far more chaotic than audiences ever realized. Behind the cool suits and exploding tanks, GoldenEye survived near-fatal stunts, clashing egos, and brutal production problems. Today, we'll uncover 20 weird facts about GoldenEye, including a bonus secret that might be the strangest of them all. Stick around to the very end for the shocker. Let's dive in. The movie almost didn't exist. GoldenEye was nearly the Bond that never happened. After Timothy Dalton's License to Kill in 1989, the franchise went dark due to a legal war between MGM and United Artists. The battle dragged on for 6 long years, leaving the Bond brand in limbo. Studios questioned if the character was still relevant in the post-Cold War world. During this time, Dalton walked away from the role, exhausted by the uncertainty. What audiences didn't know was that Bond's future depended on complicated corporate boardroom deals rather than martinis and Aston Martins. Only after MGM's restructuring in 1993 did GoldenEye finally move forward. By then, Bond was on the verge of being seen as outdated, a relic. GoldenEye didn't just relaunch a movie, it saved an icon from extinction. Pierce Brosnan was once rejected as Bond. Pierce Brosnan looked born to play 007, but his first attempt ended in heartbreak. In 1986, after Roger Moore's departure, Brosnan was chosen as the next James Bond. Posters were even designed. But at the last moment, NBC renewed his contract for Remington Steele, trapping him in television. Brosnan later admitted he was devastated, forced to watch Timothy Dalton take the tuxedo. Nearly a decade later, with the Bond franchise desperate for revival, producers returned to Brosnan. This time, the stars aligned. The irony? The show that once blocked his shot only lasted 6 episodes after his casting fell through. GoldenEye wasn't just his debut, it was his vindication, proof that sometimes destiny just takes the long way around. The first Bond made without Cold War context. Every Bond film before GoldenEye relied on the Cold War as its backdrop, villains, espionage, and nuclear paranoia. But by 1995, the Berlin Wall had fallen, and the USSR had collapsed. For the first time, Bond had to operate in a world where his old enemies no longer existed. Writers scrambled to make him relevant, reworking the script to pit Bond against ex-Soviet agents, financial corruption, and betrayal from within. Audiences were introduced to a Bond who wasn't just fighting Russians, but the ghosts of the Cold War itself. It wasn't East versus West anymore. It was old espionage traditions struggling against a new, uncertain world. The shift was risky but crucial. Without GoldenEye's reinvention, Bond might have remained frozen in history. Judi Dench redefined M with real inspiration. GoldenEye marked Judi Dench's first appearance as M, and her portrayal shocked audiences. She wasn't the stern but paternal figure of the past. She was sharp, cold, and openly critical of Bond. In one iconic line, she calls him a sexist, misogynist dinosaur. What audiences didn't know is that Dench modeled her performance on Stella Rimington, the real-life head of MI5, who shattered gender barriers in British intelligence. Dench's blunt, modern authority helped drag Bond into the 1990s. It wasn't just casting, it was cultural commentary. By placing Bond under the command of a woman who didn't hesitate to cut him down, GoldenEye made him confront his own obsolescence, and the world applauded the bold change. The tank chase nearly wrecked St. Petersburg. One of GoldenEye's most jaw-dropping moments is the tank chase through St. Petersburg. What most don't realize is how dangerous and chaotic it really was. The production used a real British Army tank weighing over 40 tons, tearing through city streets and even smashing through a Perrier truck. Locals were terrified when filming began. Many thought a military invasion was underway. To add to the chaos, the tank's weight was so immense it cracked underground water pipes during the shoot, flooding sections of the city. The crew had to repair real infrastructure damage just to finish the sequence. On screen, it looked like controlled mayhem. Behind the camera, it was near disaster with lasting consequences for the city. Zinnia Onatop's death scene was almost fatal. Famke Janssen's villainous Zinnia Onatop became unforgettable for crushing men with her thighs. But filming her final death scene, when she's trapped by a harness in a crashing helicopter, nearly went horribly wrong. During rehearsals, Janssen's harness malfunctioned, jerking her body violently and pinning her against a tree with far more force than planned. Crew members scrambled to free her, fearing she'd been seriously injured. Janssen later joked that playing Zinnia was like surviving a stunt show. But the truth was darker. The rigging system was so dangerous that a miscalculation could have killed her. What audiences saw as a stylish villain's demise was, in reality, a sequence balanced on razor-thin safety margins, reminding everyone that Bond's action wasn't always movie magic. Sean Bean's role was originally very different. Alec Trevelyan, played by Sean Bean, is one of Bond's most iconic enemies, a fellow 00 agent turned traitor. But the original script had him as much older, a kind of mentor figure betrayed by Bond. Casting Bean transformed the character. Suddenly, Bond wasn't facing an elder statesman but his mirror image, young, charismatic, equally skilled. The rivalry became more personal, almost like brothers locked in a deadly feud. This subtle change gave the movie emotional weight beyond gadgets and explosions. The twist? Bean had already auditioned to play Bond years earlier, but lost out. Instead, GoldenEye gave him the chance to play the anti-Bond, proving he was just as capable of stealing the spotlight. Nintendo's influence saved the movie's legacy. GoldenEye was already a box office success, but its true immortality came from an unexpected source: Nintendo. Rare's GoldenEye 007 game for the Nintendo 64 became one of the most influential video games of all time, pioneering first-person shooter mechanics on consoles. But here's the weird part. The game was originally planned as a simple movie tie-in with low expectations. Developers were given freedom because nobody thought it mattered. Instead, they crafted a revolutionary multiplayer mode that kept kids glued to their screens for years. The game not only extended the film's life, but also introduced Bond to an entire new generation. GoldenEye wasn't just cinema. It was a cultural revolution that rewired video games forever. The satellite dish was real and dangerous. The movie's climax unfolds at a massive satellite dish in Cuba. But that wasn't a set. It was filmed at the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, one of the largest radio telescopes in the world. The location was real, breathtaking, and perilous. The dish's surface was so fragile that stepping directly onto it risked puncturing panels or sending someone crashing through. Cast and crew had to walk carefully on suspended pathways, tethered for safety. Adding to the tension, the observatory was an active research site, meaning scientists were working even as explosions and gunfire were staged. Not many productions could claim they risked damaging a billion-dollar scientific installation just to make a Bond finale look spectacular. GoldenEye did. Brosnan was injured during his very first fight scene. Pierce Brosnan's first big fight, as Bond was meant to establish him as tough and graceful under pressure. But reality struck, literally. During filming, Brosnan threw himself into the choreography so forcefully that he injured his hand when he accidentally struck a steel object on set. His knuckles split open, and filming had to pause as medics rushed in. The incident rattled Brosnan, who worried his debut might be compromised. But instead of backing down, he returned the next day determined to finish the sequence, bruised but unshaken. The moment set the tone for his tenure as Bond. He wasn't just stepping into a tuxedo. He was bleeding for it. The opening bungee jump broke records. GoldenEye opens with Bond leaping off a Soviet dam in a breathtaking bungee jump. What audiences didn't know? That stunt wasn't trick photography. Professional stuntman Wayne Michaels performed a 722-foot dive off Switzerland's Verzasca Dam, setting a world record at the time. The stunt was so dangerous that it required custom rigging and weeks of preparation. Michaels admitted the freefall felt like jumping into nothingness, with only seconds to pull the cord. The producers wanted the most audacious opening in Bond history, and they got it. But they also nearly lost their stuntman in the process. One wrong move, and the entire film would have started with tragedy. Instead, the sequence became one of the most iconic Bond intros ever filmed, proving that practical stunts still trump CGI when it comes to raw adrenaline. The Cossack backstory was added. Late Alec Trevelyan's motivation as the traitor 006 rests on a chilling revelation. His parents were Lians Cossacks betrayed by the British. What fans didn't realize is that this entire historical twist was added late in the script process. Originally, Trevelyan's betrayal lacked depth, making him a more generic villain. By tying his anger to a real-world tragedy, the Cossacks' forced repatriation to the Soviet Union after World War II, the writers gave him a hauntingly human reason to hate Bond and Britain. But this decision wasn't without controversy. Historians criticized the film for simplifying a complex, painful event into a plot device. Still, it worked cinematically, adding layers of betrayal and guilt that mirrored Bond's own conflicts. Suddenly, it wasn't just espionage, it was inherited trauma. Famke Janssen terrified the crew with her intensity. Famke Janssen's Xenia Onatop wasn't just another femme fatale. On set, her sheer physicality shocked even seasoned stuntmen. Janssen trained relentlessly to perfect the strangulation scenes, and her commitment made co-stars nervous. In one rehearsal, she squeezed so hard that her stunt partner gasped for air and had to tap out. Director Martin Campbell loved it, saying her raw energy gave Xenia her edge, but crew members whispered that she took it too far. Janssen later revealed she wanted Xenia to be both erotic and monstrous, someone who embodied lethal desire. She succeeded, so much so that some extras avoided being paired with her in fight rehearsals. For a franchise often accused of glamorizing its Bond girls, Janssen flipped the script, weaponizing her body with chilling conviction. The production almost lost its Cuban finale. GoldenEye's fiery climax in Cuba wasn't shot in Cuba at all. It was filmed in Puerto Rico. But securing the location nearly derailed the production. The crew initially scouted real Cuban sites, but the U.S. embargo made it impossible. Instead, they transformed Puerto Rican jungles into stand-ins, complete with fake palm groves. The problem? Torrential rains turned the terrain into a swamp, swallowing equipment and delaying shoots for weeks. At one point, a truck loaded with explosives nearly tipped over in the mud, sparking a panic among the crew. Campbell later admitted they were one accident away from disaster. Yet those logistical nightmares paid off. The finale feels lush, authentic, and dangerous. Few knew it was really weather-beaten Puerto Rico holding the illusion. Together, the BMW product placement war. GoldenEye marked the first time Bond drove a BMW instead of an Aston Martin, and it wasn't a creative choice. It was a product placement deal worth millions. BMW aggressively outbid Aston Martin to feature their sleek Z3 Roadster, even though the car barely appeared on screen and wasn't used in action scenes. Fans were furious, accusing the franchise of selling out. The twist? Aston Martin came roaring back in later films, while BMW's stint as Bond's brand partner fizzled quickly. For years, the Z3's inclusion was mocked as one of Bond's weakest gadget cars, especially since it had almost no gadgets at all. Not a triumph of innovation, a triumph of marketing. Bond's most glamorous partnership that time wasn't with Q, it was with corporate dollars. The casino scene nearly collapsed under pressure. Bond's entrance in GoldenEye is unforgettable. A smoky casino, high-stakes baccarat, and his showdown with Xenia. What audiences didn't know is that this scene almost collapsed during filming. The set was packed with extras dressed in heavy tuxedos and gowns, under blazing lights that turned the room into an oven. Cameras overheated, makeup melted, and tempers flared. To make matters worse, Brosnan was still adjusting to Bond's iconic poise, struggling to deliver lines while keeping his cool. Director Martin Campbell reportedly halted filming multiple times, demanding everyone reset, until Brosnan nailed the balance of charm and menace. It wasn't glamorous. It was sweaty, exhausting chaos. Yet out of that discomfort came one of Brosnan's smoothest Bond moments, calculated, unflinching, and unforgettable. Alan Cummings' tech villain was improvised. Alan Cummings' Boris Grishenko stole scenes as the eccentric, cocky computer hacker. But much of his performance, including his signature catchphrase, "I am invincible," was improvised. The script gave him little beyond being a comic relief techie, so Cummings decided to build a persona dripping with arrogance and quirk. He added the nervous finger-clicking habit, flamboyant bravado, and smug one-liners on the spot. Crew members admitted they weren't sure if he was overplaying it, but Campbell encouraged him to push further. The result? Boris became one of the most quotable Bond side characters in decades. His sudden, icy death, frozen solid in liquid nitrogen, was all the more shocking because audiences had grown to laugh with him. Not scripted genius, but pure actor invention. The helicopter stunt went horribly wrong. GoldenEye's daring Tiger helicopter theft sequence was plagued with near disaster. During one take, the chopper's rotor blades clipped a camera crane, sending shards of metal flying across the set. Crew members ducked for cover, narrowly avoiding serious injuries. Filming stopped instantly, and safety inspectors demanded a full review before production could continue. Pierce Brosnan later admitted that watching a helicopter spiral inches from disaster reminded him how fragile the illusion of control was on action sets. The sequence looked slick on screen, but behind the camera it was chaos, with the very real possibility of tragedy. Audiences saw Bond coolly saving the day. The crew saw their lives flash before their eyes. The film revived Bond's box office power. By 1995, critics and executives doubted if Bond could survive. Action cinema had changed. Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, and even Mission Impossible were redefining the genre. But GoldenEye shocked everyone, raking in over $350 million worldwide. It wasn't just a hit. It was the highest-grossing Bond film in years, reviving global confidence in the franchise. The success reshaped MGM's fortunes and proved 007 could thrive in a new era of blockbuster competition. Without GoldenEye, there might not have been room for Brosnan's sequels, or even Daniel Craig's gritty reboot. Bond wasn't limping back. He was sprinting into the 21st century, martini in hand. The villain's base explosion was almost too real. GoldenEye's finale ends with a massive explosion that seemed like pure Hollywood exaggeration. But here's the twist. It was real. The production used an enormous practical detonation at a custom-built set, and the fireball was so large it startled nearby residents who thought an industrial accident had occurred. Local emergency services even received calls about a possible attack. The heat blast was so intense that crew members standing at what they thought was a safe distance still felt their hair singe. No miniatures, no CGI, just controlled chaos captured in a single take. The explosion wasn't just a cinematic spectacle. It was a dangerous gamble that paid off in unforgettable scale. The title came from Ian Fleming's vacation home. Of all the weird secrets, the title GoldenEye may be the strangest. It wasn't pulled from espionage files or Soviet codenames. It was the name of Ian Fleming's Jamaican estate, where he wrote all the original Bond novels. Fleming named the property after Operation GoldenEye, a World War II intelligence plan he once worked on. By resurrecting the name for Brosnan's debut, the film paid tribute not just to Bond's cinematic history, but to its literary roots. It was a hidden wink, linking the movie's rebirth to the man who created 007, a title not born in Hollywood boardrooms, but in the quiet, sunlit shores of Jamaica where Bond himself was imagined into existence. GoldenEye wasn't just another Bond movie, it was the film that resurrected a dying franchise, redefined a hero for a new world, and accidentally birthed one of the greatest video games of all time. Its production was brutal, chaotic, and dangerously close to catastrophe more than once. But from that chaos came reinvention. For Pierce Brosnan, it was destiny fulfilled. For Bond, it was survival against the odds. And for fans, it was proof that no matter how many times you doubt him, James Bond always comes back.